I'm Stephanie Martin and I'm the writer of Rage But Hope.
I'm Crass and I'm the director of Rage But Hope.
Hi, I'm Emma Davies.
And I am Dior Clarke. So tell me a little bit about this play, starting with its name. Okay, so Rage But Hope is like a series of monologues, and in each monologue there's different characters that kind of express their experiences about the climate issue, but within that, the world they live in and how that's affecting them, or maybe how they came across it, or was enlightened about the issue. That's that.
Yeah, some of them are actively involved in Extinction Rebellion. Some it comes into their lives, or it's something they witness. It's not about 8 protesters. It's a varied group of people.
And that's what I suppose is nice about it as well, is that it, like you saying, it's like some of them are actively involved and then some of them have been enlightened. So like the monologue that I'm doing, my character, his background, the world he's in, he didn't really know much about it, and he's very honest about that in his speech. And then he also talks about some of the issues he's facing in the world that he lives in due to his upbringing, his class, and that's the reason why he's wasn't so enlightened to the climate issue. So I find that quite interesting. That there's just so many different voices, and I feel like it really does capture society and the different people that may sit in this society.
There's a young police officer who is part of the police's involvement with the protests and her experiences. There's it's really quite a large cross range. Mine is a lady who's probably never been on a protest in her life, and is really changed by it in terms of the way she sees herself, as well as the thoughts of her grandchildren. But it makes her reflective of how she brought up her girls and what was important to her then, and how that's shifted and how that affects her marriage and where she is in her life now. So it's Stephanie's amazing. She manages to encompass in a relatively short amount of time and few words a very whole being, and they're all interconnected by what's happened in the last sort of under 12 months with Extinction Rebellion, and how it's some characters are witnessing it from afar and having to sort of, it's finding they calibrate certain things by what they're witnessing, things that are very personal. So it's
And I suppose what's more exciting about it as well is that, well, me personally, like when you hear about like, oh, let's go and watch a play about the climate issue, you just think, oh, global warming, the climate. But going on this journey and reading these speeches and seeing these characters, you actually do realise that there's a bigger message in it, and it's something that really is affecting the world, and and whether or not you're aware of it or not, it is going to affect you. So I think that's been quite something that's enlightened me and been really interesting, because you think you're going to go there and you're just going to hear about facts about what global warming's doing, what recycling doesn't do, but the reality is that that the climate issue is part of our lives and part of this world that we're living in, and it's tied into life, and within those different characters and those speeches we really get in Look Into Life. So I think that might be something the audience might be quite not surprised about, but not expecting to come in and meet these people and then hear about their deep experiences.
Yeah, there's no lecturing. There's no. It's people reassessing and evaluating, and with humour and with rage and with hope.
Rage and hope and vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. And from all walks of life, really quite varied, but as everything, humanity, a nice common thread.
I remember when Steph was developing the play, she messaged me and she was like, "So Dior, what do you think about the climate?" And I started off by saying to her, I was like, if I'm honest, like I don't really have any idea about it, and like since meeting you, I've learned about it and I'm taking it more serious, and we put a lot of myself into the speech. So my character is a black gay working class male from London, and within his speech he speaks a lot about the intersectionality that he faces, the different discriminations, whether that's from his community that doesn't really accept his sexuality, what it's like being a black man in London, and his relationship with the police. And so it is very close to home, and when he's talking about these issues, he's kind of saying that, every day I go through these different struggles and I face these different things, so why the hell would my mind even be focused on the climate issue? But then, I don't know if I'm giving it away, but by the end of it, he has come to a realization that actually, that this is something that affects his life, and everything that he's worked for and he's been striving for in his life, and overcoming these discriminations, well, if the world goes to end, then what was it all for? So that's what I mean about the whole thing, like it ties into our lives. There's a bigger picture of it, whether we take notice of that or not. So for me, it's kind of been like a realization too, an interesting realization, but me realizing actually maybe I should or want to care about the climate more than just the things that I think are my problems, because we all have individual problems in life, but then this problem is a problem that whether we like it or not, we're all sharing, and we're all going to have to share or face one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think undoubtedly it does have that sort of impact, because Steph has sort of written about lovely, in the monologue that I'm doing, there are little minutiae details of her life that that sort of are easy to sort of understand, and then and her fears as well, and you sort of think it's and anything that's talking about it positively, and it is positive, is it stays with you and lands with you. So I've definitely felt that. I mean, I came into it having Jilly was part of the one of the characters that when Steph originally did it in Edinburgh, and the actress doing that couldn't do it, so I came in. So Jilly was very fully formed, and I just read one paragraph and went, yes, please. She's great. She's great because she's probably the idea of there's this sort of pretty well sort of written about, middle class Sainsbury's shopping, Waitrose, M&S sort of, shopping, doesn't really want for much, has the time to spare, will, and so some of the, accusations that have been levied against Extinction Rebellion, she sort of epitomizes a character like that, in a sense, of which there have been, I've read some various things about sort of, her not thinking twice about being arrested. Well, I'll do that then, because it doesn't really hold the fear in the same way, because she's never done, she's never had an altercation with the police. She's never had a which is not to actually say what she's doing isn't incredibly worthy, but her standpoint from it is one of, I can only see the positive in this, which is different from everybody's in the, everyone comes to it with a very different history. And yes, so
I suppose that's what's interesting, because then
So
Because
our characters come from quite a
very different background, and not even just, they just have different experiences and I suppose different relationships.
and it's sort of, and it's also quite easy to sort of harangue someone for doing the right thing because it's an easy thing to do, but they're doing something, you know.
Yeah.
And what you make of them is you know, will be interesting to see. But yeah, there's I think Steph's just created an incredible incredible cross section in 8 characters. It seems to encompass a lot of standpoints, and yeah, Julie, that seemed to be a fairly ongoing sort of criticism. Well, it's all very well if you can afford to sit there, or you can afford to do as often, you know, middle-aged people who, you know, took the call to arms and went. She sort of, I suppose, is as close as fitting to the sort of person they would have been writing about.
And what was your own perspective, and has it changed?
Well, I just thought, incredible, you know. Has it changed? I think it's made everything more present by simply being involved with Steph's idea and everything she has brought to this from Extinction Rebellion, and it's yeah, it's
made it more present. It's made it more there. It's almost like you're able to actually be like, okay, no, this. I suppose because you're focusing on it, so you're more aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of found myself on the train sitting thinking, I remember being at school in the sort of mid-80s and it was like, well, there's a hole in the ozone layer, don't use hairspray. That was the conversation in the playground. What does that mean, there's a hole in the ozone layer? And I'm thinking, that's 30 years ago. What happened when we knew that was scientific fact? And I think, you know, that the timing is that science is telling us this is an issue, and everything is very slow. And the lovely thing about doing it in a form of monologue is there's a real intimacy to them, that each character shares things that they wouldn't necessarily share if we were all on stage together, because there's no facade. They're just having an honest moment that the audience shares with them. And then there is, yes, towards the end of the play, there is a moment when we are all together, not necessarily as the same characters, but yeah, that sort of sharing is I think is what has attracted. I feel possibly what has attracted people to join other people who have gone, I'm going to sit there today and so peacefully and do this shared moment is hopefully what we'll do to access, and you know,
and for people to kind of just see like this is something that is affecting, that will affect my life, and that I should care about, because we should. Like, yeah, so I think we really should. And it definitely has changed me in ways, and it sounds so petty, but like, honestly, I would like throw litter on the floor, I wouldn't recycle, and now every single time I go to like, I'm drinking out of like a Costa coffee cup or something, and I go to throw it on the floor, automatically Rage But Hope comes into my head, Steph comes into my head, whereas before, like, genuinely, like, I didn't care. And like, even for me, I remember hearing in school global warming, but not actually knowing what global warming was, just knowing that, well, in my mind, the world's the temperature's rising, but now actually realising that it's real, and I don't think a lot of people realise, and I don't think a lot of people realise it's real. I think their minds are so focused on other things, and there's so many other interests and things that take over people's lives, whether that's personal, whether that's material things, but they don't actually realise that this issue is real.
I think that's why when a lot of the children, we have family in New Zealand, and they young nephews school strike, they all went on their school strike, and I think there is something that's been very powerful about children doing that, and again, it's even coming out of it and sort of thinking, you know, I remember sort of leaving the house and going, no, my water bottle, because and actually spotting how many people have water bottles on the train and thinking, I don't think I've ever seen so many people do that. So it's just the conversation that's so helpful, whether it's just more people with their own, yours, down there, water bottles. As you say, just little things.
The small things
that start this brilliant domino effect to thinking, you know, why am I doing that? Do I need that? Do I want that? Is that necessary? And you know, that's. I think managing to, because of the, as I say, the quite confessional nature, particularly of sort of, well, I think all of them probably, as I say, I only really have, I only know mine, Jilly's, is that done with hopefully honesty and humour, it's nicer to absorb that information as well.
Yeah.
There's a gentleness to that, because these people are livid, the ones that are protesting. They are, but the message is, you know, let's be gentle to the planet. It's gentle, and and Steph's infused it with such, you know, lovely humour. And all it's a nice way for it to sit.
Yeah, for it to sit with people. Like,
Yeah,
I suppose,
with the disadvantage of not having heard the others yet, but understanding the framework of the piece. I can't wait to see everybody else.
Sometimes that's the best way for it to sit, where it's not almost like fact.
Yeah.
Here's a lesson. This is all the facts. We're in a science class, but just like a conversation between human beings. And I suppose that's what Steph's managed to do really well. She's made it. You feel, while you're sharing intimate moments with real people on stage that hopefully a lot of people can relate to, and relate to some of the lives they live, and within that. And even,
oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But I was going to say, even like Steph, for instance, that's how I got aware of it. You know, I didn't go to like a protest or a class, but just a friend talking and realizing that, oh, actually this is something that matters. So
yeah, no, it was interesting, because I was thinking sort of climate change was always something I was kind of sort of thinking of in terms of you know, lost habitats and things like that, and it's really interesting with all these extraordinary weather patterns we're having, and you know big portion of our country is under a horrible flood, and you know fires raging in, you know, approaching Sydney on the other side of the world, and it's just sort of it's important these things are put into this forum as well as every forum other than in broadcast news, which is vital, obviously, but it's a really lovely forum to hear this, I think.
How can I say this about Steph's writing? There's a realness to it.
This is honesty,
yeah,
absolutely.
like there's just, I don't know how
absolutely.
much to take. Like, there's a realness to it. There's honesty. There's. I feel like she's very good at capturing real people.
Yeah, it feels really immediate, and that's not just because it's the subject matter. No. It's the text. It
is
feels
the text.
Really immediate.
Because that's not always easy to do, and you know, as actors, like sometimes you do pick up scripts, and you're reading it, and you work on it, and you get there, but it's very rare, and it's like gold and magic when you can literally pick up a script and you see the words and you just start reading them, and the words are already almost doing the job, job for you.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. And I've just realised I've left out a vital character. I was introduced to Stephanie by an actress called Venice Van Sumeren, who I had worked with previously, and Venice was part of the cast who went to Edinburgh, because she had worked with Steph before and knew her really well, and when this other actress wasn't available, Venice thought of me. Venice plays our schoolgirl protester. So we do have the young protesters covered in this. Yeah.
I really like Scott, and I'm not just saying that because, you know, like, oh no, I really do, and I think even going over the monologue, he made me look at different things that I wouldn't have necessarily drawn upon. Because it's really funny as well. I used this speech for my drama school panel, because I needed to find a monologue and it was perfect. So I had worked on some of like a smaller version with another director. So then coming into it again, it's almost like relearning it, because I'm relearning all the parts, but then he really made me approach it in a different way. So I think he's really good at, he's really good at, he's just good.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's amazing.
Lovely working with Scott. Yeah.
What do you hope an audience would take away from this show?
Just the fact that it sounds so
we're all
bland.
in it together.
Well, yeah, we're all in it together.
We can all do something, and we should all support each other.
And the reality is, and it sounds so blunt, and it's a line within what my character says, but the reality is if that we don't do something about it, the world is going to end. That's the hard-hitting, maybe not for a lot of people now, because that's what I think a lot of people live in the present. So they're like, oh, it's fine, I won't live to see that, but, you know, your kids will, the generations, there won't be a world for them. So what is the point of all the things that we've worked for, that we've built, you know, careers, these houses, these buildings, this camera that's filming this now. But honestly, all these things would have been for nothing. And I think coming together as a community and as people, despite our differences, our different walks of lives, things we might not agree on, but you know, don't you wanna save this world? And that's even a big realization I actually had to have as well. But the world, it sounds so cliche, but the world will end.
No, absolutely. And there's a lot going on in life, isn't there? There's a lot to contend with, and we can also look at this with I mean, I hope also, and I'm sure people will be entertained and amused, but with every great play, you know, you would also take something back that gives you a lot of food for thought. And so, yeah. There's, and hopefully there'll be a character that they connect to. And very often with a character you like, and you know, this happens very often, particularly in books, you're like, oh, this person, I love this character. It's like, oh, they've done that. Oh. And there's that, you know, and that's life. But yes, and it's very unusual I would have thought, to have a play where you have such a cross-section of people.
Yeah, very.
And as I said, because of their monologues, there's an intimacy of me not having to make myself understood to Venice's character, who is 12, or, you know, by talking directly. So to have all these 8 facets of humanity on one stage for quite a relatively short period of time is really nice. It's like a really nice bit of Quality Street, isn't it? Or something that is that connect as we all do. I think it's such a lovely construct, and such a great way of, you know, because everybody's coming at the climate crisis from a different angle, and some people are maybe more animal focused, or the, you know, are much more aware of the science of it, or recycling, or whatever, and it's just giving a lovely
it's like view of voices.
View of voices, which is hopefully will be really nice to receive, and you know, there'll be something. I wouldn't dare to presume what people will take home. I just hope that they are they have lots of, you know.
And you know what else I think might be nice as well, like for people because they get to see such a range of different voices and different lives and different walks and different experiences, just to almost take away just maybe a bit of understanding about
a little less judgment.
Yeah, a little less judgment, and the different things that different people face. So for instance, from my perspective, like maybe seeing a monologue, like a speech from like your character, then I won't be so like, oh, why don't like I could understand maybe a bit about your walk of life, and that maybe the things you've faced, and not that I carry all the problems, or not like someone like my character carries all the problems. Like we don't own all the problems in the world. Everyone has different things they face, and just because your thing might seem bigger to you, it's as big to that person as well. So just a different, like, so yeah, a bit more understanding and realizing that we all are kind of one, and we're all connected in some way, and we all kind of should just work to unite a bit, because we're all human.
Yeah, you don't have to be sort of part of a club to do something. Everyone, can just
put all their...
Just pause for a minute and think.
Just pause for a minute. Yeah.
Have a little think. And people may be, out protesting that you go, well this, or I judge you on that, or I judge you on this, but maybe just listen. We don't listen enough.
Yeah, and it's the small things that matter. I don't think, it'd be lovely if everyone people watch and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but it's just that tiny switch of awareness. It's like the water
bottle, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember being a kid and going, so Perrier's come out and everybody's really interested in buying bottled water. Why? And thinking, well, whoever thought of that? I mean, I'm going to sell bottled water. You think, what's that about? I remember thinking, I don't know how they've made that work, because Londoner, you just drink your, God knows what's in it, London water, and it makes your hair go frizzy, and you love it, whatever. And now, of course, it's taken a bit of a long time for us to go, why are we carrying bottled water? Why? The horror show that is plastic, islands of plastic floating in the Indonesian Ocean and things like that, and you sort of think, that was incredible. Blue Planet came out, and suddenly, talk about woke. That was incredible, and that was a very gently told, with startling imagery, obviously, but that was a very gentle educational tool that had the most phenomenal ripple effect of making us all go, what? So it's always good to talk about it, and hopefully even better to listen.
Listen.
So tell me a little bit about the play. What is it?
It is a study of the effects of the climate crisis and the Extinction Rebellion movement on lots of different people from different walks of life, and how a growing awareness of the climate catastrophe and the work of Extinction Rebellion, how that's affected people. So it's really up to the minute in terms of reflecting, what's been going on this year, which I think is quite exciting. Like it could not be any more. Things almost, some of the script has changed a lot, almost day by day, when new news stories or things have happened. It's really about what's happening sort of yesterday, today, tomorrow. It's really immediate.
And the stories are very human. They're very it's about how people actually really feel about what is happening, and it's not just facts. It's about kind of how it's affected their relationships with other people, and it's about what they're doing to make a difference. Yeah, it's a very human story. It's just a very, very human story, and it really it shows how the climate crisis is individually affecting people in terms of how it's changing their lives, and it's changing their mentality.
And the changes are often very unexpected. I think a lot of the ways that the climate crisis, the Extinction Rebellion movement, the effects are not the ones you'd expect. So one of our characters ends up falling in love with somebody that they would never have met in a million years if it wasn't for what's happened in the last sort of 6-9 months, which is a sort of, I think, quite a... I don't know if I'd want to go and watch a play about the climate crisis. So when I'm talking about the play, I really want to make everybody aware that it's not worthy or sanctimonious. it's very provocative and questioning and critical and satirical about the movement and about different people's perspectives and involvements. I think sometimes a play with such a sort of specific topic could come across, you know, I mean, if you want me to lecture you about the climate crisis for 80 minutes, then I'll do that. But this is not what the play is.
No.
It's sort of quite unexpected in how it, the surprising human stories that have come out of the last, 6 months of this growing awareness of what's going on in terms of the headlines we're hearing, like civilization will fall apart by 2050. You know, there's so much, there's a lot to deal with, and the way it's kind of affecting people, I think, is interesting. It's sort of, the play is almost about rebirth, and this idea when you're being told that the world's going to end, actually it reminds you that you want to live in the world, which I think is the main thing that's come out of it. After our Edinburgh run, which was very short and very sort of like rushed together, a lot of the feedback we had, which was lovely, was how uplifting the play was. And I think, again, that's perhaps not what you'd expect from a play that deals with such a frightening, anxiety-inducing topic, that actually it really makes you want to be alive. It kind of goes, well, look how fun the world can be, and look how many wonderful things you can do. So, like, let's maybe try and stop it from falling apart, because actually life's brilliant. Is I think how a lot of it comes across, which I think is probably quite surprising.
Yeah, I think as well, when we think about sort of how our country, but also the world, is very divided, it's an interesting look at how this one thing is very uniting, galvanising for people, and how it brings people together, and how it makes people feel part of something together.
Yeah, and that community, how often that's absent in sort of contemporary
and
society.
It's a shared experience. It's a lived experience. It shows just how people who would never in a million years meet each other or ever interact, how they can unite and come together over something that affects us all. And actually, from a personal perspective, what's been really interesting in working on this is through the research that you sent me, the research that I've been doing, things that I was kind of ignorant to myself and have just really started to become a lot more conscious. And I think it is that idea that it's provocative. It's about getting you to think about things from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, and sort of, I think as well, it goes far beyond the climate crisis and Extinction Rebellion in terms of it's a kind of almost a state of the nation play about how we've been encouraged to live over the last 30, 40 years. A theme that keeps coming up is this idea of, you know, how the accepted morality of the last 30 to 40 years has sort of like done a lot of damage to the planet in terms of the sort of rabid capitalism, rabid growth, has really damaged both the planet and sort of individuals in the community, and how actually the climate crisis has woken up a lot of our characters and a lot of people to think, hang on, I think we're doing this all wrong. You know, EasyJet announced a couple of days ago that they're going to carbon offset all of their flights, which is brilliant. Now, why that wasn't the given from the start is slightly illogical, isn't it? Like, of course, you should clear up after yourselves. You should take responsibility for what you're doing. And the fact is that this year we've kind of had this consciousness shift in maybe a realization that a lot of how we've done things is actually really is illogical and wrong. Like, of course, a company like EasyJet from day one should have been, you know, offsetting everything. You know, it's like you clean up after yourself, don't you? You take responsibility for what you're doing, and nobody has. I mean, not nobody, but you know, it's not been the sort of accepted normal way of sort of business as usual.
I think that's really interesting. I think because if you think about it on a kind of corporate large scale, it's about responsibility. It's about a collective responsibility, and I also think that is massively throughout the whole play.
Yeah.
About our individual responsibility to do something, but also it's about apathy and about how we've been
allowed to
to
be
be
it.
apathetic for such a long time. It's not my problem. How can I as an individual make a difference?
Yeah.
And actually, if you're thinking about just yourself as an individual, I think that's kind of losing sight of what of everything. As an individual, yes, you are only one person, but when you put all of those individuals together, that's when something big can shift.
And actually, it's really good for you, like community and helping each other out and taking responsibility makes everyone happy. And we've not been encouraged to do that, it seems, from my tiny perspective where I'm sitting. It's not been the norm for everybody to, at corporate level, at individual level, to really prioritise community and responsibility. And I think the last 6 months have made people wake up and go, hang on, why, how have we got to this point? And actually it's not worked. It's made, mental health crises, it's created this, obviously, the facts of the climate crisis by thousands and thousands of scientists are inarguable. It hasn't worked, so maybe there is another way. And how can we do that? How can we individually and encouraging like government and corporate change, which is obviously, the most important by far. How have we gone so wrong, and how can we carry on with, it's really encouraging at the moment because I see so many adverts based around sustainability now. There was the back page of a magazine I saw yesterday, which was a company, a sort of like Uber style company doing something eco. Companies are now advertising themselves as carbon neutral, as sustainable. So change is obviously happening, and it should have happened from day one, right? Like it makes sense to, to make up, to take responsibility for the mess that you make.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the play kind of goes above the specific climate crisis and the Extinction Rebellion, and kind of it's a state of the nation look at how maybe the last however many years that our common, the morally accepted consciousness of how we all behave, perhaps hasn't really worked, and perhaps there's a way of moderating that. And the play covers kind of more radical and more centrist attitudes to how we can move forward, which is a really interesting dynamic, actually. And with the Extinction Rebellion movement, there's obviously like a huge, as a decentralised movement, it has an absolute multitude of voices in it, which means there's lots of different people having lots of different attitudes and opinions on how to activate change. And there's like a line in the play, I think, which is, so what are you asking me to do? Just remember my canvas bag when I go to Waitrose, or are you asking for the dismantling of capitalism globally? Which is quite a fun question. Like, what is it? What is the way forward from this point? We know where we are. It ain't good. And some people really are that radical, and other people just want to sort of maybe more, just remember your bag when you go to Waitrose. Remember your reusable cup. Like, is that going to make any difference?
I think it starts with initially being more mindful. That's the first step of being conscious
Awareness.
and aware of something, and then one of the characters, one of the younger characters in it, who's a schoolgirl, she talks about if I can pack my bag in the morning properly and like make sure that I'm using things that are kind of the right choices. If I can do it as a child, you can do it as an adult. It just takes you a few extra minutes just to be a bit more prepared. So just those little things, I think I'm hoping that it is sort of, in terms of it being provocative, people will take that and go away thinking a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it will do its very small part to help with this shift in consciousness about where our morality lies now in 2019, in terms of how we, what's an acceptable way to behave now that we know the situation we're in, and how we as individuals can act accordingly to the facts and to the to the headlines and to the statistics. How do we move forward now? Do we allow ourselves to carry on as we have been before, knowing that those behaviours have led us to this point? you know, is it our responsibility? Again, the play sort of deals with the kind of idea of obviously individual responsibility versus corporate responsibility, and how obviously like me remembering my reusable cup could not be any more of a drop in the ocean in terms of making a difference. And then what is our individual responsibility? Is it our individual responsibility to take governments and hold them to account, and corporations? Is that our responsibility, or is that the corporate responsibility and they just need to get on with that, and we're allowed to sort of sit back and say, oh well, it's nothing to do with me because, you know, it's the corporates, it's government, I'm an individual. But then is it also individual responsibility to take those organisations to account? Is quite an interesting question, and I think it sort of covers all of these things in debate and in sort of a lot of conflict about what's the way forward. Yeah, and it covers a lot about the Extinction Rebellion movement in terms of both really celebrating all the achievements, as well as examining a lot of the criticisms that Extinction Rebellion has had in terms of you know, who the movement appears to be for, who it's run by, certain methods and certain you know, ways of protesting that can exclude, you know, certain parts of the community. So the play is very much a, you know, celebration of people power, and you know, what incredible achievement Extinction Rebellion has had in a short, you know, going in a year to go to a sort of global brand, as it were, really is pretty impressive. And all the sort of all of their amazing work, while also, you know, critiquing what happens when you have an enormous organisation with so many people in it that is decentralised, that you're going to, you know, have these moments of, you know, somebody doing something in the name of Extinction Rebellion that basically everyone in Extinction Rebellion completely disagrees with. The Canning Town tube incident, you know, was a real like the day before that happened, you know, every single person was saying, please, 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 please don't target the tubes. Of course, targeting the tubes is a nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. You're only going to get in the way of ordinary people trying to go to work. Also, the tube is obviously a really good, you know, as transports go, you know, and the day before everyone was going, please, 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 please don't do this. If anyone's thinking of doing anything with the tube, please, it's obviously a really terrible idea. And then a tiny faction went ahead with it, and that caused this enormous press backlash, public backlash, media backlash, understandably, because a small group of people were doing something in the name of Extinction Rebellion, which they're permitted to do, because of course one of the benefits of having an organisation, you know, with so many different factions means that it can spread really quickly and people have ownership and autonomy, and that's wonderful. But then when the tube incident happened, everybody was, you know, it was awful. It was such a frustrating thing to watch happening, actually.
I think with any movement, you sort of have a sort of, if something within that movement, if you get like a small faction that does something that it isn't the best choice to make, what I also think happens is that the media then focus on that very small thing. So the thing that's deemed as being negative or bad or wrong
or foolish,
and forget about the bigger picture. I mean, I think it's a classic media thing. They focus on sometimes on a small detail of something and forget about the wider scope of something. Because actually, people have moaned about the inconvenience of getting to work. What happens if you, 40 years, 50 years down the line, nothing exists.
Yeah.
So you can't, in that momentary thing about complaining about being delayed of getting to work, what the people who have been protesting are doing is actually, it can be seen as being selfish, but it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. It's doing something so selfless, because it's not just about them, it's about everybody that they're doing this for.
So the play really covers, you know, the sort of all of the successes and all of the sort of surprising joys that have come out of, you know, the movement with community and people coming together, and how wonderful that is, as well as obviously, you know, examining, you know, how problematic it is to have being arrested as such a main part of your methods. when that is, you know, is not an accessible or an appropriate thing for everybody to do, and how kind of thoughtless that is. There's a really, you know, the first and last monologue of the play cover that issue specifically, and there's also a part of the play where we see a courtroom. So we see 4 people who've been arrested for Extinction Rebellion, which I think is a really brilliant and sort of real moment in history that we're in at the moment. So you have four people with a lot to lose, 4 people who are not the metropolitan liberal elite, which I think is how Extinction Rebellion has been painted a lot of the time, which is simply not the case. So it's, you know, sort of showing the reality behind, exactly as you say, what the press has chosen to focus on, showing the reality of these 4 people from all over the country who, you know, have everything to lose, really don't come from a place of privilege where, you know, everything will sort of be okay because, you know, that's their background, but who have been absolutely driven to commit, you know, a crime in order to get their message across, because they can't think of any other. They've done the petitions, they've done the marches, nothing's working, and the only way they can think of doing their bit to prevent the catastrophe is to be arrested, and all the stress and all the anxiety and the costs and the, you know, the troubles associated with what that is. Especially, you know, a lot of the people that I observed in court were saying, you know, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm not a rule breaker. I really, you know, I'm a good person. Like, I just had to do this because I can't think of any other way to really try and stop something that I know that I'm basing on so much evidence is going to be really, really terrible. And I have grandchildren, and I can't sleep at night if I haven't said to myself, I'm doing everything I can, and this is my last resort. And I'm really upset. You know, it was an incredible thing to witness, and I thought that's got to go in the play. You know, because I don't think that's being reported properly and widely. You know, there's been so many articles saying, oh, Extinction Rebellion's just a whole lot of hippies looking for something to, you know, the next outdoor rave to go to, you know, all that sort of stuff. And actually, what I've witnessed, particularly in that court, was the most, you know, so opposite to that. The reality is that it's people from all walks of life, actually. And I don't know why the media don't want to show that, because that's really interesting, that it's not just people who are seasoned protesters or seasoned activists. It's somebody from, you know, the middle of a tiny rural Welsh village, you know, who's come all the way to London and really put a lot on the line in order to, because she's compelled to, because she believes so strongly in the cause, and that she has to, you know, she has to do everything she possibly can. We need to get that story out there.
Yeah, I think that's also really interesting to kind of think about what actually drives someone. It must be important if someone is driven and compelled to do something like that. That could jeopardise a lot of things for them. People who, I don't know, who work with children, or if they risk getting a criminal record, that could be the end of their careers. And I think so people who are risking so much, what they are risking it for has to be really has to be thought about,
especially when they don't come from a cushion of privilege.
Absolutely.
You know, that really serious stuff. So I'm really excited to get that story out, because I'm not seeing it often enough, because it's sort of incredible actually what's happening. So I think that's the sort of the real climax of the play in our final scene. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a play which really celebrates and sort of makes people want to be alive, which perhaps isn't what you'd automatically think with a play about climate change. So I really, you know, I hope that comes across as much as possible. That, you know, it's a play that shows, you know, that it's important to save the planet in order that we can all carry on having a lovely time. And, you know, all of the different effects effects and sort of brand new 2019 human situations that have grown out of, you know, whether it's people protest. You know, there's a woman who's lived a very closeted life and has become a pretty radical protester, and that has made her feel like a once in a lifetime purpose and adrenaline and, you know, thrill like she's never felt before. Whether it's the person that falls in love, you know, all of that sort of, those unexpected sort of consequences. What do I mean? I don't mean consequence. Effects. I said effects too many times. What do I mean?
The unexpected revelations.
Yeah, revelations and rebirths that have come from in this last 6 months. That everybody's kind of gone, oh, okay, the world's ending. Oh, right, okay, what are we going to do about that? Okay, let's get together. Oh, right, this is really wonderful. Community is really wonderful. Having a purpose is really wonderful. Doing something is, you know, something so pure and so totally good in its purpose, actually, which we cover in the play. This idea of we're not. It's not terribly cool to be earnest, is it? Or to be sort of really. It feels quite. The characters can feel quite evangelical. The only thing I could. We talked a bit about this, haven't we? That they feel like they're really kind of, I'm going to save your soul from burning, like that kind of really impassioned,
incensed,
religious
primal
fervour that can come from, you know, really wanting to make a difference. And it doesn't really have a, you know, it's sort of getting on the side of good, I suppose.
Yeah.
That perhaps isn't terribly like cool. And it's not cool to be earnest, and is it? It's sort of cool to be withering and, oh well, I think actually it's this, isn't it? Rather than just going, okay, we've got a problem. Okay, let's get together. Let's fix it. You know, let's just do that, rather than sort of sitting back and making withering, sarcastic comments about a topic.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, let's just mobilise and get together and see how we can be positive and constructive, rather than just sitting back and
not doing anything
and being kind of
apathetic
and oh well, it's this,
dismissive.
isn't it? Dismissive and critical.
I think as well, like as the title says, it is about people's frustration, their anger, their kind of passion to kind of speak out and to act out. But it's also a play about hope. It's about it's a play that also says something can be done. Yeah. Because actually, I think it is, like one of the characters says, it's a cop out to go, well, can't really do anything now.
Yeah, I'll just probably leave it actually, because I've
got a holiday to go on.
Yeah. But it also, there's a really fun scene where we see both sides of it, and where one of the characters like, when did you last get on a plane? Go on, when did you? And the person says, oh, actually I went to a wedding in Portugal. Oh, well, you know, got you, I win, you're a hypocrite. So it kind of covers all of the, you know, all of that stuff as well, which I think is important. Like, it's not sort of like propagandist at all. Yeah. It's sort of going like, how do we, oh yeah, I've got to go to a wedding in Spain. Like, what am I going to do? Well, I've got to go. Okay, is that okay? Can I get away with that? Even though I know that planes are terrible, what am I going to do? You know, it's all those questions as well. You know, it's not sort of like, here we all are, holier than thou. You know, we have to exist within a system, and if that system is, you know, what's that quote? There can be no moral choice in capitalism, or something like that. Terrible paraphrasing. So maybe just time to go and live in the woods in a hut. I'm up for it if you are.
I'm totally up for it.
2 Capricorns.
In a hut.
Discovered we were both Capricorns, you see, and then it all made sense.
Yeah, it all made sense.
Of course, we're both Capricorns. That's why such a, you know, bonded creative team. Yeah. So Flora, who's one of the cast, was quite involved in the April uprising, and she came to me and sort of, I think they'd done some sort of street theatre, and you know how to use theatre to sort of spread the message, and she sort of commissioned me and said, oh, do you want to write something for this? And then I started researching climate crisis, and I had a sort of meltdown where I was like, sorry, hold on, the world's ending? Is this something we should all be a bit more worried about? So I went through this first couple of weeks when I started writing the play of absolute despair, which was my first sort of real like going down the rabbit hole of where we are right now. And then we thought about different, all the different voices that are involved, and some of the sort of doubters and some of the zealots, and writing a really balanced, we've got several characters who are Met Police, we've got an 11-year-old, a 70-year-old, people from different, cultural backgrounds. So Flora kind of gave me the first, let's do a play about this, and then it just sort of quite easily, came with all my research and all my sort of real sudden interest and sudden real passion and fascination and kind of despair at the subject matter. It felt really, really urgent and really, really necessary. And I know we shouldn't use urgent when describing theatre because it's a bit tacky, isn't it? But this play is urgent. So there we go. The characters, as ever, all my characters are blends and combinations of everyone I know, so watch out.
Okay, noted.
Watch out. Nothing is off the record.
It's
all going in. It's all going in. It was inspired by lots and lots of different real life people that I met, that I spoke to, that I read about. So I read lots of newspaper articles or talk to lots of people who were involved, and then kind of blend them all together. So nobody is, I'm not getting sued, like nothing is too realistic, but it's all a sort of, like what was interesting was the real life story of this like love story between a homeless guy and one of the protesters, and they met and fell in love and had this relationship. And I thought, well, that's just what a lovely thing to have come out of it. So that inspired one of the stories, and then all of the school strikers and how passionate all the kind of year 6, year 7 age group has became one of the other characters. And then I thought sort of filled the gaps of, the missing parts of the state of the nation, as well as the real life people that I stole from.
There's interesting connections as well, how the characters sort of are connected. That's really, I find that quite interesting, and how there's kind of echoes from different characters in their experience or in what they do and what they say, and that's really beautiful in the play.
The similarities, especially with different ages.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
honesty and the characters.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Edinburgh production and how it was received.
So it was very, very quick. Scott wasn't with us, which is heartbreaking to even imagine. So we sort of, I can't remember how quickly we did it, but Extinction Rebellion were given a space at Summerhall to curate for the Fringe. So all of a sudden we had this space and this slot, and Extinction Rebellion Edinburgh were wonderful and hosted us, and and we sort of managed to get 8 people, a couple who were already up there, and another, I think, 6. Everybody just wanted to come up and do it, which was so wonderful, and I suppose a nice example of sort of how you can mobilise in people power quite quickly. Went, okay, want to do a play, we're going to get involved, Extinction Rebellion, okay, it's these dates, can we all do it? Okay, let's do it. All right, we're doing it. And it was this kind of, we didn't have a director, I don't think we even rehearsed it. Poor actors. Just sort of read it through a few times, then they were on, which, was brilliant of their sort of generosity and their kind of care for each other and care for the topic rather than anything else, which was lovely, a lovely energy to have. And then we had 4 brilliant performances at Summerhall, which is such a great venue with so many brilliant sort of new plays. And the feedback was, I think that the uplifting thing, which I was really delighted about, kept coming up. I think people are like, oh, I've got to watch a play about the climate. Is this going to be miserable? Is it just going to be Steph, lecturing me for an hour? And actually it was it's very funny as well.
Yeah, it's very funny. It is funny.
It's 8 people, the satire of it and the sort of the hope part of it, as well as this processing of the anger and processing like, hang on, how have we got to this point? The powers that be have known about this for 40 years. How have we got here? I'm really, really cross about this, but also, okay, come on, we can let's how are we going to get through the next day? Let's be positive. So the feedback on sort of going, the uplifting and the humour of it, and it being fun rather than a chore to watch.
Yeah.
Was really encouraging.
You don't feel like you're being lectured at all.
I hope not.
And then after that, how did Scott get involved?
We met a few years ago.
Yeah, we worked together a few years ago when Steph was an actor in a piece that I directed, and we sort of just stayed in contact. And then
I saw your brilliant country music.
Yes, oh yes, you did.
Yeah.
And then that sort of ignited a sort of a conversation.
Let's do
Hi, let's do something. And then this came up.
Yeah.
And I read the script and was like, yes, this is amazing. Because I really like human stories. I really like authentic voices where you really feel like the characters are vivid and the stories and the experiences are kind of real and honest, and that's what's really lovely, because as well as we learn about the characters' lives, we learn about who they are and where they're coming from and what their own experience of life is. And yeah, that's sort of how going back to how we sort of met. It was kind of a conversation that we just started having.
Has it changed your perception or impact
of the climate crisis? Oh yeah, massively. I also go day by day where I'm like, oh, it's just too much. Like I sometimes side with the different characters. Like sometimes I feel like a real evangelical, like, you know, really full of like real fervour and real like sanctimonious anger as well. So I feel myself having days like that where I think I'm so cross with everyone and everything for everything everyone's doing, which is not helpful and is really hypocritical and really sanctimonious and just unpleasant. And then I have some days where I'm more like the antagonistic characters, where I'm like, oh, it'll be fine, won't it? Because they'll just sort it out, and the headlines are hysterical, and it's catastrophizing, and, you know, I mean, it's cold today. Like, I suppose I sort of swing between, you know, and the sort of slight fatigue, I think, after, especially with the election coming up, you know, maintaining a level of real passion and dedication to the cause is an interesting feeling with this version of the play post the October Rebellion, you know, and the sort of differences with that, and lots of people I speak to are just like, I'm just fed up with it, you know, and how to sort of maintain a momentum, you know, in order to really help activate change. Because I think the thing with Extinction Rebellion is, like them or loathe them, the contribution that they've made that has meant that EasyJet has announced this, that, you know, other companies are really using sustainability and, you know, everything else as a marketing tool, you know, it is obviously in part due to this enormous upright, you know, people power. But yeah, it's quite difficult feeling like you can maintain that level of dedication actually to something, isn't it?
I think something it's made me really think about is why wouldn't you want to do something?
Yeah.
It's logical. Why would you just throw things on the floor? Why would you not recycle? Why would you not kind of do something to contribute? I find it quite through researching. Just I find it quite strange that you just wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, again, going back to that thing about what one of the characters says about packing their bags properly. Like, now I'm really mindful, just like little things like bringing a reusable cup around with me, a reusable water bottle, a tote bag, just like those small little things.
It couldn't be easier.
It couldn't be easier.
Yeah.
It literally takes you no time at all.
Yeah.
If you've always got one of those with you, those small little changes become big things. They become accumulative.
And also there are however many million people in London. If everyone did that, the enormity of difference. Yeah, it's logical, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a really unreasonable, you know, there's no argument to that.
Yeah, things like eating less meat or no meat, like those sorts of things that where when you're presented with a fact and going, this is not very good, this is bad, and then almost taking a pride in and celebrating it, I find quite
bizarre, isn't it?
strange.
Yeah, like it's a logical conversation. Here's a suggestion about how you can contribute to the scientifically proven situation we're in, and people go, oh no, I don't want to do that. It doesn't, to me it doesn't make sense.
And I think that's what I find quite interesting, how you're dealing with facts. You're not dealing with an opinion. You're dealing with something that actually is concrete and solid. So why would you oppose that, and why would you actively go against it or do nothing?
Yeah.
I'm not sure which I find more frustrating, doing nothing or going against it.
Well, I just find it bizarre when you're given, here's the situation we're in, and here are some ways that you can help. The end. But obviously not. And that, again, I think comes back to the idea that the last however many years, how we've been encouraged to live, it seems to me, is not with a focus on responsibility and is a focus on personal wants, and you're allowed to do whatever you want whenever you want, you know, which I'm not sure has quite worked out well 30 years later. And it's also like, it's not like everyone's really happy, are they? You know, the sort of the mindfulness culture is a reaction to the way we've lived, you know.
Yeah, I do think that our environment, the world around us, contributes to how we exist and how we function within that world. I think that those things sort of go hand in hand. If you don't, it's going to impact what you see around you daily, like when things are dirty and when it's going to have an impact upon the way that you start to feel. And actually, if you change those things, it's
only a good thing.
It's only a good thing. And well,
it's like Layla, the 11-year-old who's really precocious, says, she's like, it's literally better for you to walk. You know, this kind of childlike understanding of like, I don't know why you want to drive so much. Like, it's literally better for you. It's better for your health. It's better for the planet. You just like walk.
Yeah,
you know,
and it is.
And that kind of straightforward. Here are two ways of doing things. Yeah.
What do you hope an audience will take away?
Probably a mass uprising which leads to a complete systemic change is what I'm really I'm pretty sure of I think I think it's about holding ourselves and each other to account, and you know, we've got to change. Like, we know that we can't carry on as we have done for the last however many years, because it's, you know, causing, you know, 4 degrees of warming is like game over. Like it's London underwater. It's mass, you know, millions of deaths. So we've got to change. Something's got to give. We know that. So I hope the play will do its small part in really, you know, helping people get on that on the right side of that conversation, which is that we know we've got to change. We've got to do it. And whether that's individual changes, which we know are negligible, or whether it's, you know, making sure we're voting for people with, you know, who we believe will carry out those changes, or whether it's, you know, taking part in targeting government and corporate, at government and corporate level. So I hope the play will do a lot to help people make those changes and really be able to hold themselves to account. To really, we've got the facts. We've got to do the right thing. Really, I think, and I hope the play will bring that home to people at whatever stage they are in the journey of sort of a realization of what is factually true, the scientific evidence. And it can only be a good thing, actually, for me. You know, the last 6 months, it's about this sort of mindfulness, which I know is a bit overused, but actually, like, a growing changes to the way you live is about, you know, really appreciating everything we have, and that happiness doesn't really come from like rabid overconsumption and making all those changes, and also realising how that life is a gift, actually. You know, and we can make it a really good one, I guess. Yeah.
So where can people see the play?
It's the Streatham Space Project on the 26th of November to the 1st of December.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Chelsea.
Hi, my name is Julie.
Hi, my name's James.
Hello, I'm Flora.
My name is Dior.
My name's Robert.
And I'll be performing in the play Rage But Hope. That's in partnership with Extinction Rebellion. This play, in a nutshell, is to spread awareness of what is happening in the world right now and what we can do as people to come together and make that change.
The play is about the shock, the anger, the anxiety that a lot of people are experiencing as we realise the current situation we're in terms of the climate catastrophe, and the failings of government and corporations that have led us to this point.
Climate change is obviously real. It's happening. You can see it around us.
Let's be honest. If we as a, community and as a world don't pull together in the next few years, there ain't going to be a world.
It doesn't just affect you, it doesn't just affect me, it doesn't just affect the protesters on the streets or the supporters of XR. This affects everyone.
The play explores the empowering, uplifting elements of the Extinction Rebellion movement, the community it created, the unique effects it had on these 8 different characters and their lives. It's also a play with lots of hope and lots of humour and warmth. As people read these terrifying headlines and they think, how this has changed them, how this human catastrophe has provoked, change in a lot of people.
What we need in today's world is kindness, cooperativeness, and a clear view of what is really going on.
And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fight in the best way we know how by spreading this information through a beautifully told, loving, touching, humorous piece and disseminating the information as best we can.
The more mainstream that we can make this movement, the more people we can, involve, include, the more people that take to the streets, the better.
Everyone needs to open their eyes to what's going on in the world.
We need to tune in.
And make a movement that really means something.
Thank you.